go to Darren, and then half one to get
Thanks for the lovely introduction. How's that sound? Is that loud enough? It sounds very echoey to me. Is that all right?
Bit dull.
What can I say? Good evening, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here. I love coming to Birmingham Truth Juice. It's one of my favourite groups. It's nice to see familiar faces and new. Tonight I've got a bit of an unusual experiment I want to run with you all, if that's okay. I'm kind of getting a bit tired of these things being just so talky. So I'm thinking about a bit of interactive stuff if you guys are up for that. Nothing too dramatic. Anybody uncomfortable with that? To some extent. Okay, well, the essence of tonight is about the concept that I mentioned in the title of this evening, which is probably quite a confusing title. I imagine a lot of people may have been put off by such a paradoxical and strange-sounding title this evening's talk, but I've started to care less about such things and just enjoy spending time if they decide to come along. So be wilder is what I want to come and talk to you about tonight. Because tonight is going to be all about paradox. It's going to be about how we can get into the non-dual, present aspects of self within us that underlie and underpin everything we do. Because I'm very concerned by the amount of just information, disinformation, contra-information, just all this stuff. It's all in the disembodied spheres of stories being bandied about in the internet and the alternative media that is very difficult for us to substantiate, but we have emotional and mental reactions to them. We can find out all this information. It can affect how we feel during our day and what we think about and what facial expression we have and how we deal with people. And that's the bit that worries me most, because we seem to be bringing ideas and concepts and beliefs into our world, into the story of your reality that maybe doesn't belong there and maybe you don't actually want there. And hopefully tonight some of that will make a lot more sense as we're trying to get into your now, here. Okay, so we're going to try and get more in. Is anyone here in with the power of now? Come across it? Yeah? You hand? Okay. So very much like what Eckhart Tolle was talking about in there, but embellishing upon it a bit more to understand what it is to stand in your authority of both now and here. Because it's very much about playing on that spell. So a lot of my stuff, for those of you that haven't seen me before, is about, as Andy mentioned, the power of spelling, or what I call the power of spelling in our language, as some people call it. And it's all about the effect these words, these spells that we use every day have on us, about our belief in ourselves and our environment. And what concerns me about the alternative media at the minute is that so much of these stories are thinning out our presence. They're making us think about so many more disembodied subjects that I can sense and feel concerned that people aren't being in the body, they're not being in the environment. So, is everyone familiar with the concept that there is only now? Okay. Does everybody have a sense of that in their life in some way or another? Okay, so what that means is that there is only now, 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 now. And the material of this now is made up from what was there 5 seconds ago. It's reforming and refining. Does that sort of make sense? I know it might seem a bit linear and maybe people don't ever get caught up in that, but just for now if we can say that. So now what I'd like you to do is to picture every human expression on the planet now, 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 now. And ask yourself, what story of our species do those snapshots tell? I don't know whether you picture faces that were frowning, or faces that were smiling, or faces that were laughing, or faces that were crying, or faces that were screaming. Or did you know what ratio you had in your own mind? But what concerns me, the only face you can actually do something about in that snapshot of our species is yours. And my concern is the effect all these stories are having on your joy, your ability to enjoy the companionship that you have in the daily environment, and whether those people get the fullness of your presence or whether they get the frowny face because you're worried about the fluid in the water or what's happening in Afghanistan or what's happening in the political situation or the council tax or water or whatever. All these things that move you from your state of well-being. State. State is a word we're going to talk a lot about tonight because it's really interesting. Does anyone know what the opposite of state is? We're going to talk about paradoxes, so there's going to be a lot of opposites tonight. We're going to look at how we can get out of the non-dual into our nowness. What's the opposite of state? Non-state. Yeah, that is true. And what would that be then? I'll suggest a word for you. Change.
Stateless.
Well, we need. Let's go there. Change. Change is the opposite of state. So the state is like something that keeps its form, keeps its shape. Change is state. Change is state. Change is state. And what's happening at the minute is our energy of change is coming up against the state that is within us, and the state that is in the world as well. And all the tools I think we're accumulating are to help us bring about change. Bring about change in state. That is both the state within and the state without needs. My concern is that a lot of these stories, you might have been talking quite a lot about that recently, but stories that are coming into you from the outside world are affecting your change energy. And how effective it can be because of how present you are. And how present you are with the people you're around on a daily basis. So, the title of tonight's talk was Be Wilder, I Am Now, Here. Because I can't speak for you, I can't say you are now, here. So that you can determine whether you're being present and attentive to those that you're with. Now, the reason I'm kind of drawing attention to this is because the situations in the world around us are getting ever more tumultuous and kind of fragmented and a bit scattered, and a lot of it's coming in, it's difficult to validate, it's easy to have an emotional reaction to it, and none of us can control how bombarded we are by stimulus from the outside world. But what we can do is control our internal state and whether we let anything change that state. And so what the tools I want to kind of try and impart tonight are about your capacity to be in your now, here, with the people that are around you, because that's the substance of our being. It's the substance of our existence. And our culture has progressively disembodied us. We've been disembodied into ideas and concepts that have no substance. Those concepts are what we might call in formation. They are in formation. They do not matter because they are in formation. Okay? And our substance is matter, and it is what matters. It's the presence of where you are now in your life and the quality with which you enjoy your now. We can't change what's happening in the world out there, but there's this, I have this funny thing where and the more I've gone along, the more I've realised and experienced that there is no consensus reality. Do you know what I mean by consensus reality? So the concept of state, things like that. So there is no state. It's just a bunch of people that believe there is one. Yeah? You get that concept. So what that means is that it's about the uniqueness of your story and your reality. So again, I think I've done this with some of you people before, but now I want you to turn around and look around at the people around you in the room and see whether there's anybody that looks like you. From my perspective, there's nobody here that looks that or that. And this is because your story is unique. Your story is completely unique. And somebody else's story and telling somebody else's story with your behaviour and with the things that happen in your life. And I'll give you an example of that where you might be letting other people's stories influence yours. So the woman down the street gets burgled and you go get a burglar alarm. That's where you're buying into the fact that there's some consensus reality. You are somehow affected by an event in somebody else's life. You must somehow need to change your behaviour or change your world as a result of something that's happened to somebody far away, even though it might be just a street away. It could be your next door neighbour, and the uniqueness of your story and your belief in yourself could well mean that you still wouldn't feel the need to get a burglar alarm. You see what I mean by that example? And it's really what tonight is about owning the uniqueness of you. You know, the fact that this planet and this cosmos has spent billions of years to dream the uniqueness that is you forth. And the fact that you're still here means you're not a bad idea. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. You still have your needs met by the world and the environment. Most of you are probably getting connections met. You're turning up at places like this, so things seem to be trickling along. But where's that sense of worth and value within yourself? That's what tonight's going to be about. So, I want to do a little experiment, and if anybody's too uncomfortable, it's not a problem. But I want you to turn to the person next to you and put your hand on their forearm and tell them that you are here.
She's not here.
Everything from musical chairs to physical conversation up there.
She disappeared. She vanished.
Who wasn't comfortable with that? That's okay. Anybody else not comfortable with that? Okay. It's all right. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Your story is unique, sister. Okay. How many of you look the person in the eye when you do it? Yeah, okay. Yeah. And those who were held, how did that feel to have somebody reach into your space like that? Is that all right? It's quite a safe and trusted group though, isn't it? If it was just some random stranger coming up in the street and putting their arm on you saying, I'm here. There's a really powerful statement of presence, isn't there? They can just introduce themselves. The thing is though, I mean, really, in a way, every interaction we have is about us just saying, I am here to each other. And even although it's not physically embodied, like you just did there, even a letter coming through the door is some face of cooperation saying, I am here. Everything is just something else. So really, the only time we encounter problems and friction in life is when our personal reality bumps into other people's. Because our personal belief about the world and our personal belief about ourselves stands true until we meet somebody else. And it's when we bump into their reality that things can happen. But really, it's all, you could sum all of it up in saying, I'm here. And the now is about how we choose to meet and encounter each other. Whether it's warm and friendly in substance, or whether it's cold and distant and counting because we're distracted, we're elsewhere, we're agitated and worried because of all the things that are distracting us. And I think that is the biggest hurdle to change. And we have you know, the elegant prophecies.
I'm going to get some more of that.
Okay, it's alright, no, it'll be fine. You're going to end up singing a big black red crosses. Yeah, you're just getting ready, you're cracking. Okay. So anyway, I'm told lots of friends are losing, where was I?
Here.
In the now.
Here, now, yes. Sorry, where was I? I was here. Okay, so yeah, in the now, it's all about how, and it's about where we're at. Where we are at determines our response in the now, and our ability to respond in the now. And whether we're even there, or whether we're just totally distant and elsewhere with people. And I think that crux point is the massive obstacle to change. It's the disease point. It doesn't matter what the information is because it doesn't matter. It's in the process of mattering, but it doesn't really matter. It's just information. But we're all disembodied in our information while we're not in the substance of where we are, in the feeling of the now, in the situation of the now. And what that means is that the snapshots of our species now, are much more frown-filled than I think they perhaps need to be. It's difficult to determine what is the true snapshot of our species. I think most people have a sense that as a species and as an individual you're in a process. You're in a process of change, of development, of becoming, of blossoming, whatever you want to see it as. But we're in a process, but we take snapshots and then cast judgments about our whole process as a result of the snapshot. So I'll give you an example of that. You have a day, you're in the morning, you have a telephone call. And it doesn't go your way. Not everything goes. Some you have to forget or you didn't see what to say or whatever. But you can take that 2-minute call and make that the snapshot of your day. You go for this and you say, oh, it's an awful day. It's a terrible day. So-and-so. And we make that one little snapshot become the story of the whole day. Whereas the other 23 hours and 10 minutes may have been perfectly fine. And that's just a snapshot of one day. What's a snapshot of your judgment or conclusions about yourself in terms of your career or your worth in your community and how you express yourself, or in your relationships, your capacity to give and receive? What snapshots have you judged? Perhaps not being forgiving of the fact that you're in a process of ever-changing nows. And if you choose to judge one snapshot and make it more important than the others, why not make it a good one? Because there's a negative snapshot we can take of each other and of ourselves. And it's such a powerful thing to be able to surrender into your own process. There's an old story of some Buddhist monks or something like that, where they're approaching a river and they get to the edge of the river and they have to build a raft. They build a raft and they cross the river, and at the other end of the river, one of the monks leaves his raft there. He's finished with it. The other one builds a strap and straps it to his back and carries it with him. He's come across another river. And it's quite a powerful story, I find, that one. And I do wonder how often we do that within ourselves in terms of either snapshots that are no longer true, or defense mechanisms and behavioural patterns that we've built up that tell a past story rather than our present one. And I really want us to get a sense of how free we can make ourselves in the now to make new choices. So should try to experiment. Okay, now the essence of tonight is still about be wilder. Now, this is about the bewildering truth of your irrational being. But I believe we are like a cherry of rationality sitting upon a cake of irrational being. I like the example of cake because I like cake. There we are. Most of my events up until now are always in the cherry zone. I want to try and get us into the cake, into the substance of our irrational truth. Because I think that's much more the substance of where we are. Where, we'd like to think we know what's going on, but really we've just got a series of snapshots. And we're all kind of trying to find out a sense of our own identity and what's going on in amongst a whole series of snapshots. But it's very difficult to determine which ones are actually valid and true snapshots. Especially now after the conversation we're having tonight. Because really the point I want to get across is anything that you hear about where you weren't there is just a story. And I really more and more want to hammer into people about just let go of the fixation to either fear or reaction to those stories of other people's worlds. It's not because it's not something that you should have empathy for, or sympathy for, or compassion for if you hear about a tale. But if we continue to live in increased fear or concern as a result of some tale that we're unable to substantiate, then that worries me more than anything. Because faces which should be getting filled with more presence and more wonder and more joy end up frowning more and looking down more and spending more time online trying to digest all the new stories that are coming in. Because there's just so much disinformation and contra-information out there, I think it's very difficult to determine what is valid, what's relevant, what's meaningful. So we'll look at how we can get the neck go along with that and just get into our now a little bit. So I would also play with the words about the now and here, so let me just get this one more here. People even see this. Can you see this? Just, okay. So anyway, this is about the bewildering truth of the paradoxical self, which is about, as I've said to some of you before, that I believe we're in a universe of the manifestation of the two eyes. I have a hand for each and a leg for each, and they seem to pull in different directions at times, where one eye wants chocolate and the other one doesn't. One eye wants a tiny house, the other one can't be bothered. One eye would like you to be, better at work and better, more organised and all this sort of stuff, and the other one still can't. But all these things where, and I mean that with the utmost profundity. And I think that we're wrestling in this conflict of these two eyes, and this cherry of rationality sometimes gets in the way of making any progress. And one of the points I want to make tonight, just for us to take away, is the fact that, as far as I'm concerned, the last time I checked, we were the top mammal on the planet. And as far as when I checked it, we were top mammal, managed to kind of cultivate most of the physical environment, dominate perhaps not so benevolently most of the environment. We seem to be doing all right in that respect. And I wonder about the qualities that brought us to this position on the planet. Because when I look at my wild brothers and sisters who share the eye like I do, come with the eye in a bit. But when I look at these other animals, like the birds and the wild animals, I see in them an intensity and a presence that I feel we somehow have lost in our disembodiment and are lost in the mental spheres. And I kind of like when I talk about us getting into substance, it's about us getting into the wildness of our being, the fact that there's a part of our body that wants to be out comfortably in the wild wind, flipping the ground with our feet and, absolutely at home in this environment on this planet. Whereas so much of our so-called evolved thinking or cultural thinking is about us getting away from here or not being from here, or so dishonouring all of this planet's capacity to dream us forth as a good idea of hers in a way, or an expression of that anyway. We could talk for a different night. But certainly, as our top species, how is life these days for you guys? Because that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking around and thinking, we're meant to be the top mammal on the planet. What's going on? I'm looking around, and other than the overhunting of humans, the other top mammals seem to be having a pretty good time. The lions seem to be having a good time, the apes and everybody seems to be having a good time, other than when we intervene. And yet I see so many of our brothers and sisters in our species not having such a good time. And it should be the other way around, we should be having the best time. And then maybe that's just all about our perspective, because in your now here, how many of those problems of the world are actually here? How many of those stories are actually here now? I don't know about you, but I'm ducking the rapists and the paedophiles and the terrorists and the bombs and all, Somehow your story doesn't contain those elements for now. Celebrate that. It's not a crime to celebrate it. In fact, it's something to be celebrated, not in a condescending way, but in a way of bringing you more joy in the now. So anyway, let's do this perception example. So, rewilder is the theme where it's about your courage, your tenacity, your capacity to bring change. We're going to talk, if I can get this in within an hour, about the manipulation of your change energy is going to be one of the themes, which is affecting your wildness, your presence, you know, the substance of your being here and confident and powerful in its presence. I think that's a journey for all of us. But this is about the nowheres of now here. So now here is about nowhere. It's about there being nowhere. Nowhere isn't a non-place. It's about there being nowhere. It's only here. For each of us, it's only here. And this is going to get a little bit paradoxical because we're going to look at the concepts of right and left in a bit as related to now here because of perspective. So here we go. We're going to talk about your attention for a bit. So let me just write that word up. Attention. Right. So the Toltec would say your attention is the most powerful faculty you've got. Because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, something is taking it. Something has got your attention. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it doesn't matter whether you've got a little bit of attention or a lot, something's always got it. Now, in the now of nowness, whatever has your attention is something that you are bringing into the now. Because you're the one who's focusing on it. So let's give you some examples of that. I want you all to focus on this bottle for me. Focus on the bottle. This isn't that much. So if you focus on the bottle for me, what is clear in your field of vision? The bottle. Thank you. What happens to everything else? Right?
Blurred.
Blurred. Okay, does everybody agree with that? Anybody disagree? Okay, so that's 100% agreement there. This is how perception works. Now, what's interesting is that when you pay attention, the one thing you were told at school, pay attention, in some senses the Toltecs would be right when they would say it is the only true payment. The only true payment of anything is your attention. So, let's just give an example. So when you were looking at that, this was important and everything else was blurred. So, I want you to focus on the bottle again for me, please. And while you are focusing on the bottle, I am equally unimportant as everything else, aren't I? I am equal to the carpet, I am equal to the flip chart, I am equal to the chairs, whatever else might be in that blur. I don't stand out as any more important, do I? Not when you're focusing on the bottle. Does anybody think I do?
Well, you're talking, so...
Yeah, so the talking is what throws you off. But if you could surrender to the experiment and simply focus on that without my voice coming from me, if it came from somewhere else, then the point would be that I would be, and also obviously I'm directing you quite a bit, but yeah, I would be equally unimportant. Now that's a very, very important point because that kind of peripheral vision is a vision you were born with. You learn to focus. You learn to pay attention. It's a thing I call predator vision. So we're trained to focus on things and make things important in a sea of equal unimportance. Okay? We make things important in a sea of equal unimportance. So when I get you to focus on the bottom again, I'm making you make it important in a sea of unimportance, or a sea of equal importance or unimportance. The point is the equalness of it. If I was standing on grass with a tree behind me, with that same experiment, if you focus on the bottle, I would be equal to the tree and the grass and the sky and everything behind me. Our perception already has the fundamental quality of all manifestation built into it. We are the ones who make things important by paying attention to them. Now, let's do an example. Here we go. On that table, I want you to visualise for a moment. If you visualise, on that table, we have some alcohol over here, a variety of liquors and beers and ciders. In the middle here, we have a selection of tobacco products. And over here, we have some cannabis and some classy substances and some other interesting psychedelic tools. At the back here we have some chocolate, quite a variety of light, dark and milk chocolates here, and over here we have some pornography. Okay, so if everybody's visualization capacity is up to the max, at different times in your life, different objects on there would have an attention to you, possibly, depending on if any identify an issue with you. I picked Vice because it's the easiest one. Certainly for me, anyway. But the point of attention is, as a spell, it's one of these little spelling anomalies that there are many. It's actually about attention. T-E-N-S-I-O-N. Attention. Or attention, which is all the characters. So basically, we are, whenever we make something important, we are at tension with it, energetically speaking. So there's a two-way flow of energy sometimes that takes place. So if you were a smoker who hadn't smoked for a few days, which would be the more attractive thing on the table? It would be tobacco. If you were a chocoholic, it would be chocolate. Somebody like a drink, it would be a bottle if you were parched. The example is the same because the quality of attention is the same in all of us, regardless of the thing we choose to make important. Whether it be the bottle, the glass, or whatever. The tension is the same. Now, your entire reality, all of it, now, are all of the things you are attention with. Or they're all the things you are paying attention to. Or you still have attention with. So this includes all your experiences of your past, all your fears, concerns and hopes for the future, all the values you have with you now. All these things are the things that we maintain threads of tension that affect our capacity to be present now, here. And we have fluttering in all sorts of directions, both from our past performance, past behaviours, or past experiences, or again, like I said, the future, or the now. Now, the thing that we've got to deal with is the fact that that applies not just to objects, it applies to ideas and beliefs as well. It's the entire reality is built up of what we pay attention to. So, go on then, let's have it. You've been waiting for it, let's have it, go on.
I'm going to have one picture of it.
Let's do it.
Andy's waist.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to end up with a duct tape strapping thing.
Pinch it onto his t-shirt, I'll stick it.
We're beyond the hinging now, we're on double duct tape. This is it. Here we go, that's it. Key.
Don't read too much into it.
I'm not going to read anything. Okay, but it's survived me leaning over, so that's the main thing. I'm a bit like a newsreader with these notes in front of me. There's lots on them, and I wish we could refer to it, but it's actually just a mnemonic device. It's total disorder. This is my cake here, not my cherry. No, it's fine, it's fine. I'm trying to remember where I was there. Oh yeah, attention. So, this applies to everything, this applies to all of our stuff. This is about the sensual truth of the substance of our being. That we are sensual, feeling, reactive creatures. And that encounters in the now, encounters of substance that people reach out and contact us, are helpful. It'll be quite jarring, it'll be quite jolting. If we can be fully present with that, that's full on. That is, and I think that is the thing that's needed for us, is to be able to make these deep connections with each other. And I think it's one of the, again, one of the side effects of the distraction process is that we are disembodied and not connecting deeply with each other, getting tension with each other, and forming what I call the human constellations of power. So what I mean by that is the people that we can work and connect strongly with, that we can trust deeply in substance and in feeling, and that we can turn to them as we feel, when we feel, and that's to be held. Because I feel like for me, that's what's important. Because it's all well and good referring to situations that annoy us or upset us, or people in the world whose behaviour upsets us, but if we can be in our feeling with those that are around us, how can we hope to be in our feeling when we meet these people, and to be able to give an authentic account for ourselves, in terms of being able to say what we want to say, mean what we want to mean, and to be able to do it with the presence and authority that we would like to. I've learned more and more that I don't believe there is an authority out in the world to overcome. There isn't an authority out there to overcome. There's only an authority to become. When you become your authority, it's an everyone authority. That is the authority is about the author, it's about the storyteller. And what you need is all your story. And it's all about getting you into that. Anyway, I wasn't afraid of digression. I'm going to get on to perspective again, sorry. So attention, that was right, we're on attention. Attention is a massive subject. It's a massive, massive subject. Because this is how we feed concepts, and we feed ideas and beliefs. So remember, it's all information. Information. So I've said it many times, I'll say it again. 12 people in a room cannot change the world with their ideas, but if they get a whole bunch of co-creative divine entities to all focus in the now on that story, then that change can occur. And if you are giving your precious tension-making capacity to a concept or a story like that, like a negative one, then it doesn't matter how you feel about it, you're still anchoring it, you're still on the for or against of that concept now, or that belief, or that whatever it is. Can you imagine things like the House of Parliament, or Buckingham Palace? Can't think of another example. There's loads, but those still do. They are just buildings, okay? Just a building. Just bricks with some windows in them. That's it. Nothing else. But they have a presence and a substance in your emotional and mental worlds, where they are more than just a building. And they're larger than just the ground that they physically cover, aren't they? And they have this reach within them. This is how they exist in the mental plane. This is about the physical plane. This is where they are, what the House of Parliament is on the mental plane, or what Buckingham Palace is on the mental plane, which is all about how we all think about it, how we all feel about it, how much attention we give it, and what quality of attention is it. So to be aware of something without giving it any power, and that's the art form. So the stuff we're discussing tonight is to try and arm you towards cultivating it, because it takes time to be able to disengage your attention-making capacity from things which have habitually ensnared it, so that you can restore it, restore your boundary, restore the health of your boundary, so that you can rewield your change energy without it being all fluctuated and caught up with various nonsenses. So let's look at how we do this. At the minute, what's happening in the world around us, everything is like this, me getting you to pay attention to the ball. Then Coca-Cola managed to do what they did when they said you just have to get people to see your name 7 times a day, with their whole marketing thing. All they said was, to be successful, get people to see your name 7 times a day. It doesn't matter if your product's good, it doesn't matter what you do, whatever, you'll be successful, you make it big. Because of manipulation of attention and all of the things. So anyway, really easy thing to do. So, I'm going to ask you to focus on the bottle. And then, what I'm going to do in a moment is keep focusing on the bottle. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to drop the bottle, or move the bottle, and I want you to see if you can keep your gaze as it is. Okay? So try and not focus on a new subject as I move the bottle. How easy was that? Anybody manage it? Yeah? And show of hands, everybody manage that. Okay. It was difficult. Your eyes moved, you jumped onto something else, didn't they? Yeah, it's a habit. You've been trained to do it. This is that predator vision. And the predator vision is based on keeping you in fight or flight. Keep you as an animal rather than as a human. And the animal cells. But not the wild animal, the collared animal. Not the collared one. Yeah, the collared animal, not the wild one. So, right from infancy, you've been kept in a state of fight or flight, and through being trained to look at the world in a particular way. And the way predators view the world is as threat, distance, and direction, basically. Pretty straightforward. They're threat assessing all the time. All the time. What I'm going to suggest to you now is that that's what you do all the time, all day, every day, is you go through the world and actually, without realising it, you're in a threat assessing mode. And the only time it comes to light is when something untoward happens, like, or something unexpected. So it might be, you know, twilight in the evening, you're walking home, and all of a sudden the rock is punched off. People come round the corner ahead and, you know, make waiting hoods, or they're just going to be a bit unknown to you. How many people here would have a reaction to that, honestly? Yeah, you would change the way you change your demeanour, assess the situation, basically.
You move your body,
Sorry?
you move your body, you move your hand down.
Yeah, all these things. Now,
They reckon we're receiving 230 signals a second, don't we? Sight, sound.
I couldn't even begin to count. I would say it's probably more. I would say it's probably more. And basically, the point being that what's happening is we are choosing how we make things important. So the only reason you can walk down the street without having a panic at every tree and building you come across is because you've already built up a bank of safe knowing, things that you know are safe. You're not afraid of them anymore. Or you've got this whole criteria stuff in your attention that is potentially reactive. And this is partly what keeps us scattered, is being in a fight or flight mode of our eyes not trusting to rest and enjoy a different mode of perception. What we're going to do is we're going to try that experiment again with the eyes, but we're going to start with our eyes closed and we'll do after that. So, can I ask everybody to close your eyes for a second? Close your eyes all the way through. If you close your eyes, as you close your eyes, I'd like you to just keep your attention to your breath. And then through your nose and through your mouth, please. I want you to imagine that you're breathing in through your crown, through the top of your head, and down your back. It's easier when you're breathing into your back. Now, when your eyes aren't focusing on something, they're at rest, a bit like how they are just now. And this allows them to actually receive information from the world that are jumping into rapidly focus. So with your eyes closed still, and feeling them as relaxed as they are, and more than ask when you do, I don't want you to open them as you normally would. I'd like you to see that you can maintain a very soft gaze when you don't focus on anything. I want you to use the breath breathing in through your crown down into your spine to make it a bit easier for you. So, and now I'd like you to open your eyes and see if you can maintain a very, very soft gaze, not focusing on anything. If your eyes do focus on something, don't worry about it. Just go back to the exercise and see if you can go back to making everything equal. Was that easier for anybody that time? Did you do that? How many people managed it that time? Yes. Is that difficult? The eyes jump around, don't they? Now the thing is, what that means is you're not in control of your attention-making capacity. And you're jumping around on things. And this is where, in Eastern teaching, the Indian teachings, they would say that the element of the mind is, or one of the elements of the mind, maybe it's the lower mind, the intellect, is fire. It's fire because of the way it jumps around. And what you just experienced with your vision was that quality. Your mind jumping around to anchor on things, trying to grab things in the world, to be oriented. And this is actually, all of that affects your ability to be fully present. To be able to choose when you move from your state of presence and when to act in the world. I'm not suggesting it's an easy thing. But what I'm going to suggest to you all is if you practice with that, you can use that to actually defeat any mental fixation, any addiction, or any habitual behavioural pattern. Because the second you can snap into a soft focus, you break all tension. You're not paying attention to anything. The only time you can be feeding a charge into anything, whether it's advice, habit, thoughts, beliefs, whatever, snap into an open eye, soft gaze, and use your breath to keep yourself centered and present, like that, and diffuse any tension. What it can do is it can give you the freedom to act in a situation, to make a new decision, because you can break the fixation. So if you picture yourself in a situation where things are a bit of a tense, either at work or in a relationship or whatever, you imagine if you could have just got a respite, just a breather for a moment as those feelings were escalating. You were anxious because you felt under threat, or because somebody was right in your face, or because you felt betrayed, or because you felt whatever, it doesn't matter. The feelings are moving through us, all this sort of stuff. And if you can just break that tension for a moment and make a decision, make a different choice, you can use that technique is perfect for that. It's amazing to do it. It's literally just snapping into a soft gaze and return it and just breathing in through the crown of your head, down your back, play around with that breath to just bring yourself present. And I'll tell you what, most of you will feel uncomfortable in your own presence. Why you can't do it? It's difficult to say. You're amazing. You're present. You're substantial. You've got substance. You've got feeling. You've got quality. When things encounter the substance of our being, we feel it, you know. And it's our discomfort with our feeling that creates this embodiment. Anyway, we're going to get on to how that affects our state, because this is what it's about. It's what state are you in? So you're going to go on for a second. This is how many people want a break? How long have I been talking? That's all right. Are people all ready to carry on then? Yeah, okay. Yes, push on. Okay. Did you check in out, brother? It was that long. Reach it to somebody else and put your arm on the table here. You want to do that? We'll do it again. Is it the same exercise again? Just ask me to do it again. Do you reach out and touch somebody in the forearm and tell them that you're here? We're up to this time, really. It's going to take me talking about paying attention. You're all nervous. But even doing it now. Look at that. You see the difference over before? We go, this is safe, this is happy, this is easy. But now there's a chance somebody might actually see you. You know, now there's a crack on it. Oh my goodness, how terrifying. I can't believe how few people did that. That was brilliant. And if you celebrate that, celebrate that's our speech just now. That's where we're at, is that nervous, distrust of contact and encounter. Very difficult to encounter each other. You know, it really is. I'm going to laugh about it. Wow, I can't even handle the risk of somebody actually seeing me. These are people that are probably like-minded. If it's so difficult here, how difficult is it in places where we don't see things? You know, or in places where you're walking in the street, and this is just about the encounter. You know, this is really, really simple stuff. Okay. So, how many people actually, before we go on to that, I want to try and, I've been wrestling with a new thing I'm trying to express. So, and it's about right and left, or right and wrong, because in terms of our encounter with each other, and our encounters, I've learned that there is no right or wrong. There is no right or wrong. There's only right and what's left. Okay? And we'll go into this in a little bit for you. Because paradoxically, right isn't really right. Or should I say left isn't really left. Left is also right, it's just implied that it's left. It's implied that there's something left behind something. It's not really left. It simply doesn't have a name. It's just what's left. Now, the right side of you is the part of you that is about naming things. It's about making points, it's about detail, it's about all this sort of stuff. The rest, the cake is prayer. Isn't bothered by all of that. Now, here's an interesting thing. I like. Right, focus on the bottle for me again. That's all right. So I'm going to say to you that this is a bottle with a green label on it that says Strathmore Sparkling Spring Water. I'm right. How many of you can see that it's got a green label on it, Strathmore? None of you can. Okay. From my perspective, traditionally, I would be right and you wrong. As you said, or two sides that I was wrong because you were trying to say, don't be silly, it's a bottle with a barcode on it. You silly man. Or you going to say, don't be silly, it's just a clear glass bottle. You're all right. Everybody else is just what's right. The value of other people's perspectives is something that we should take into account in our encounters and in our respect for each other. Because I've started to realise ups and downs are neither here nor there, as it were. Ups and downs are mere transient fluctuations. It's really about the left and the right. Or right and the left. And the process that I'm trying to nudge along today is about getting into what's left. So all the stuff you know about yourself, all the stuff you believe about yourself, that's all on the right side, because you know it. You can label it, bring my wash, all the rest of it. The journey, though, is to discover what's left. What's left in the substance of who you are and what you are. What's left is not uncovered yet. And where can you find it? And the only place to find it here, now. That is the only place. And there's so many things that we're around that are seeking to draw us away from it. Now, we are up against massive challenges. All this stuff about the state. So all of you who are here because of problems with the state and governance, is anybody here because of issues with the state that have upset them, or issues with law, or issues with money and currency and all these things? Every single one of those things are all distractions. Every one of them. Generally, actually, not even that important. They're transient problems. They will go. But they are absolutely vying for your attention to help give them validity, but also to scatter your very precious attention.
Royal baby.
Sorry?
Royal baby.
Royal baby.
Don't tell me how it ends.
I don't even
Don't tell me.
I love the fact that I'm really that sure what you're talking about. I feel relieved. Oh, excuse me. Right, yes, all these things are vying for attention. But really, they're literally distractions. They're surface. They're just surface. They only affect your physicality a little bit. They really affect your mental and emotional world. Really, really, really effective. The real work was done before the state came along, when it was the church. The church managed to achieve a disconnection from source with people. So, I'm sorry, where the work of the state was made easy because it was enacted upon the back of a broken spirit of humanity at that point. But basically, if you didn't toe the church line, you were burned. Your family was tortured, all this sort of stuff. So the people that were left at the end of the sort of medieval witch trial process in Europe were the ones who either knew how to keep their mouths shut or the ones who had learned to toe the party line at that point. And what that meant was, because of how that indoctrination is skewed when it doesn't point to what it's meant to point to, it's left people disconnected from source, disconnected from the substance of their presence and their being. So that when people were coming in on the top of that, to engineer state, that work was easy. Because if you could stand in the power of your connection to source, if you could stand in the power of that, then it doesn't matter what anybody tells you, you would not be moved from that state, your state of connection. So, all that surface stuff is really distracting and there's a lot of energy in it. It's difficult to get to the bottom of what's meaningful and what's not. And I want to try and reach as many people as possible with that. For me, I'm going to get into what I consider to be the nub of it. The nub of it is that it doesn't really matter how much information you go and research, how many stories you find out about problems in the world. They're not really going to foster your enlightenment, your accomplishment, your attainment, your comings and presence, your life or your authority, whatever it is. All those stories about events in the world are not going to foster that. They will distract you. The thing is, though, that we can be led into feelings of empowerment or feelings of awareness. And my concern is that we're still disembodied. And I want to show where I believe that disembodiment process took place. And I think it was in the education process that taught you about shapes of language. So the language side of it is the spelling side of it. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I just want to talk about shapes for a moment. So I'd be willing to bet that most of you were probably taught that these were the basic shapes at school. Right? Anybody taught anything else? They are a square, a circle, and a triangle. Yeah? Okay. Now, only one of these is the basic shape. Okay? The basic shape is this one. These are points. The actual basic shapes are the line, the circle, and the spiral. The line, the circle, and the spiral. These are the ones which go back right away back. The line, the age-old symbol of male. The circle, the age-old symbol of female, feminine. And the spiral, which is what happens when these two exist or coexist in harmony. The male and the female energies are well balanced, you get a spiral. And you see spirals everywhere in nature. And you get the cloud formation, galaxies, our galaxy is a spiral galaxy, spirals are in water, cloud, everywhere. Now, this is pretty fundamental because these are the basic shapes. Right? So this is right at the beginning of your rational mind building blocks. And for some reason, you were taught about this shape. Now what's funny is, this shape is change. This shape is state. Okay? So this is about form, and this isn't. Well, these two are about form, this is more about form. The point being that when the male and the female coexist together in harmony and in balance, you have a dynamic state. Or you have change state, change state, change state, change state. What you have is a circle that never completes itself. It's the energy of the point of the male pushes it out, pushes it out. The spiral in two ways. They go entropic, where they become more intense. The fields within them, so you're all in different spirals in your life. You're either in the spirals which are the ones which are opening and uplifting and more inclusive, or you're in the ones which are more oppressive, tenser, and sort of like more intense. The intensity is different from the ones which are opening. And generally we find that we're on these loads of situations in our life, we're on these spiral patterns, anyway, we just process it as we're in. Now, what's important about these shapes is that if people don't know about this one and how it works and how to use it, then this never arises. And what you're left just as a result. This is how you engineer a state. You engineer a state at the level of character manipulation. The alphabet is about character development and character formation, characters. And the manipulation of the characters of our alphabet, the very things that we build our spells with, to refer to things, to share our feelings, to share all these things, are flawed and skewed. They're not quite all as they should be. Which is why we struggle to become present. We struggle to get embodied. Because our mental framework is scuppered at a fundamental level. Fundamental. Now here's the interesting thing. This is actually about, what's the thing? Well, I'm going to draw one thing first of all. Those of you that know me from the guru work, which we'll talk about in a bit, you'll know that at the heart of the spiral, there is a shape that we're all familiar with. And that shape is capital G. Or what looks like a capital G, it's a shape. That is a shape you'll find on every single Masonic building in the world. In a set squaring compass. Every single Masonic building in the world. And the Masons will tell you what they're told. It's not true. They're told that God or geometry. It's not for God or geometry. The G in the set squaring compass was being used long before the Masons published their books in the early 17th or 18th century, whichever it was. That was when they started to lose any real credibility rather than gain it. This is about the trapping of the spirit of man. It's about the containment of the spirit of man. The reason you don't get taught, why this doesn't arise and you don't even get taught it, is because the men are all collared. The men all have to wear collars to go places. And a cuff. You don't get taught about this because this is the change energy and it is collared to maintain a state. Okay? And there are places you, brothers and I, can't go in this world unless we're collared and cuffed. And just because they're made of fabric, it doesn't change what those attires are that we have to wear when we go to work. With the collar and the cuffs and the tie. If they were made of steel, it might help us remember the reality of the situation that we're in a bit more clearly. But it's all related. The relationship between the collaring of the men, the obscuration of the line, the trapping of the G, and the fact that we're only taught about this, as well as, we're not doing it tonight, but as well as what's been done to the alphabet, these are the things that cause your mind to struggle to refer to your experience. So we have ideas, all the words and ideas have become cliche. They've all been used for us and against us. They've all been used for both the left and the right. all the words of positivity, emancipation, liberation, they've all been used to death, they've all become cliche, in some sense anyway. I lost my phrase. Oh yeah, because and it's really because they've all been, they've lost the ability to refer to the substance of our experience. That's why so many of us switch off the words, or we think they're unimportant, because they don't refer to the substance of our experience. But it's only because of the distorted mental framework we've been taught to use. This can be quite easily fixed or readjusted so that the spells in the words can point to the substance of our experience, like the collar, the cuffs, and the tie. So for those of you that have been looking for words that maybe express their statement of humanity, there you go. It's stating in the face of whole life. Just like many of the other words that I've been talking about tonight refer to the substance of experience. Now, like the now here, the attention, other things like that. So this is really important though, because what has been happening to all of you in your lives, it doesn't matter whether you're into politics, ecology, food, spirituality, whatever, relevant, doesn't matter. Well, it's not relevant, it's very relevant, your story. It doesn't matter to me. The point being though, what you've been learning is how to draw a line again. Okay? So you've been learning how to draw a line in the world as to what you'll accept and what you won't accept. So whether you're drawing that line over what you've just been told about the world, or whether you're drawing that line in the way that people are treating you and what you won't stand for anymore, or how you demand people speak to you, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We're all learning to draw lines again, all around us. And this is the redrawing of a healthy boundary, a healthy space within yourself, so you can manage your internal state by using your energy of change for yourself, rather than to maintain somebody else's state. The really interesting thing about drawing lines, and I only discovered this when I was painting my daughter's bedroom a couple of years ago. I was trying to do this 2-to-1 thing. Try to draw a line. And I realised, I know, I'll get something to make drawing a line easier. And what's the thing that you draw a line with? A ruler. A ruler. A ruler is what we use to draw lines. A ruler is what we use to measure. Okay? The thing is, our ruler isn't drawing lines in directions that we want. And I speak not just for the one out there, and I also speak perhaps for the ongoing incumbent state within that wants to continue its behavioural belief habit against the energy of your aspiring change. There's nothing going on in the world out there that isn't an exact mirror of what's going on within you in terms of an incumbent psychopathic state that your fragile, delicate, aspiring, inspired energy of change is wrestling to deal with. As I said, there is no authority out there to overcome. There is only the authority to become. So you're becoming the authority of your own change. Bring about change in your state. And if you are then meant to be the harbinger of the change your state out there, it will happen. But only by beginning now, here, with you, where you are. Nowhere else. And the more you can get yourself into that state, the easier it will be to change, funnily enough, because the paradox will really work between the two. But it's a really powerful thing to consider that change is a fragile thing for us as individuals. And it's fragile not because it's delicate, it's fragile because it's newborn. It's a new, raw, delicate expression of self that we're cultivating that hasn't got that much practice. And you know, in terms of the snapshots we may be taking of that about ourselves in our own process, I maybe invite you to take a bit more positive snapshots of your processes. Anyway, lose my thread in my own mental shenanigans. Sorry? That is exactly what it is. I think shall we do that? I've only got a few more points to make after a break, if that's alright. Can we have a 10-minute break? Is that alright? Is that long enough? If we can have a small minute break before our activity starts.
Darren, Deojee.
And also going to thank you all for still being here, because I appreciate it. Some of these subjects can be difficult. We're going to be tricky to be honest with ourselves about. So in this half, we're going to see if we can bring some of this together. So at the end of the second, at the end of the first part, we're looking at this shape stuff and talking about the calling of the men or calling of that change energy. So despite the fact that it's only the men who wear the collar, it does apply to the change energy in us all. So this very fragile change energy that we're talking about, trying to break through in our lives, manifesting in things like events like this or other things, being change or whatever else, these are all about bringing about change in state. Now I think though, to understand though and respect, the reason I mention this is because this is a matter of the, this is a matter of the utmost profundity and concern, as is the fact that men have to walk away collar and cuffs and things like that. And frankly, a lot of the other issues we have to address and deal with in the world that we're having our attention taken to, as far as I'm concerned, they're small fry compared to this. And the fact that we're a graded collar system, the fact that the characters of our alphabets are manipulated, which we might have attention tonight, I'm not sure. But really I want to emphasise this kind of encouragement of the change energy in you, and to also recognise what it's up against. So state out in the world has arisen as a result of something in all of us. Does anybody know what it is? Well, the state has arisen.
Suppression.
Duality.
Nope.
Lack of knowing about self.
Close. Yeah, close, sorry.
Lack of knowing about self.
Well, that's definitely, yeah, that's a good catch-all that one, many people to go in there. I'm going to say, but that is a good description of it, because it's actually insecurity. Sorry?
Dependence.
Yeah, I'm going to say insecurity, because, yeah, independence is very much part of that. Because it's about the part of us that doesn't actually like change. The part of us that wants reliability. The part of us that wants security. The part of us that wants to know that certain matters are being taken care of without us really needing to worry about it too much. And that process of the handing over of responsibility, authority, or decision-making power has happened progressively over eons. To the point where we now are, where we have this massive state, both within and without, that has resulted as a result of our resistance to change. Thank you very much. What's interesting is that when you're trying to bring about change, and if you consider yourself to be a change agent in any way, you've got to expect state to resist. Because what else is there meant to do? Is what happens within us. If you're trying to change the state of your life, you've got to expect the inbuilt habituation of behaviour, belief, practice, all these things. You've got to expect it to resist change somewhat. And this is what we've got to get better at, is just our trust in our process. Actually, our trust in oneself, and the capacity of our belief in knowing oneself. And we're going to trust our process and build all this, build this capacity of sort of a knowing of our own capacity to be built back up. So even though I mentioned this, and it sounds quite abstract, just talking about basic shapes, but this is about why the mind doesn't relate to substantive experience, and where it's short-circuited at such a level that allows you to develop such acuity, such insight, such skill at knowing oneself, or being able to label and name parts of yourself, and yet still not being able to perhaps integrate and anchor that in the way that you aspire to. And a lot of that is literally as a result of skewed mental wiring at a geometrically shaped level. I know that makes it a little bit out there, but I really do feel that that's really bad for our mind. So just get this off the board. So what's happening now is we are all learning to draw lines, to shape of things. Shape, you know the term, the shape of things to come? Well, your process that you're in is shaping the things to come through the lines that you're choosing to draw or not draw. Through your action and your inaction, you are shaping the things to come. And you're doing it by choosing what you make important out of a sea of equal unimportance that you looked at earlier. So you're shaping it by making things important out of the sea of unimportance. And I don't think there's anything more important than what you're choosing to spend that precious attention on. I don't think there's anything more important than that. Because that then is the story of your life. The story of your life is the thoughts that you have, the beliefs that you have, how you express them, whether you're a frustrated, angry victim of the world or whether you're something else, something hopeful, something inspiring, something grateful for your short space or whatever, you know, in this time and place. I think we've got a big challenge before us based on the culture of celebrity and the hierarchy that we've engendered into, where some people are deemed to be more important and more valuable than others. And there's nothing worse than that for our own finding of worth and value. And it's a real challenge because, you know, an apple can never be a pear, no matter how much it wants to be. It was built to be an apple. And the best thing it can do is be an apple. And everybody will be very, very happy if it could just be an apple. And this is a bit like us in terms of what we're maybe wrestling with or struggling with. And it's such a responsibility to be able to be you. It's actually really difficult. Fortunately, there's one person capable of it, and you're closer to them than anybody else. So that's one good factor. But otherwise, it's only you to be that. And that's the difficulty of drawing your own lines. I've even omitted it, it's gone. The line is so ephemeral and so vulnerable it can't even last the break on the board. But this is what we are really up against. In the now here, what are you making important? What am I making important? What are we choosing to focus on and shape? And so, how do we, try and run, there's so many things that I'd like to have covered in terms of the duality of defense. We've only looked at a couple. We've looked at change and state. We've looked at the line in the circle. We've looked a little bit now in here, a little bit left and right, not that much left and right really. But the one I want to just talk about to close with as well is about division and unity. Division and unity. And on your journey to being now, here, your wild, fullest, most authoritarian self, there is a little bit of a hurdle of evolution to overcome. So we're having a tape failure, a tape top failure. It's all right. I'm going to end up with just like duct tape wrapped around the guy. We're going to duct tape mummy. Sorry. So I actually look like I'm being like presidential in my presentation. Have my hand here.
You look like Lady Gaga.
I feel like a bit of a gaga, that's for sure. Okay. So we have this, so really, I mean, all of this, all the stuff I've been talking to you about tonight, is about a new story. It's about a new story of language, a new story of some words that you have some ideas about, a new story about shapes. And another part of that story that I kind of want to tell is about the story of humanity. Because this is the thing, the little stories are things like the story of this building. So that's defined by the management, the employees who come here, the story of this place and what they do when they're here is dictated by the management. If you're a child at home, the story is dictated by the parents. They say, they're the authority there, the authority about the story, so they tell the story of the home. If you live here, you'll behave this way. That's how it goes here. That's the story of this place. But the big story, the big story is the story of humanity. The story of what it is to be a good human being. What it is a human being does. What it is a human being is built for. That's the big story. The big story is, what is it that you can do to fulfill your greatest function and value to your brothers and sisters and the world and the environment you find yourself in? That's the big story. Who are you? Who am I? Why are we here? Where are we going? Shall we get on board with that story? The rest of it is a distraction. And as this chap that came through the bridge was talking about the word distract, and he was absolutely right when he said about it was about throwing you off track. And in fact, distraction is about grip, attraction is about grip. And then actually distraction is about getting you to lose your grip on the now and the here of you, and the fullness of your story, who you are, why you're here, all that sort of stuff. That's the big story. So, to add to the story of humanity, I would suggest, not case, that's suggestions, that we're on a journey of evolution through aspects of this human thing, whatever it is. Some of it's solid, some of it's not so solid, some of it I can't even see, but I can feel it. Some of it I don't even know what it is, but it works like my thoughts. And these aspects of being a human have gone through many names, through many traditions through the years, from chakras to energy centers, jewels of awareness, to whatever you want to call it. But one thing that seems to be commonly agreed no matter where I've looked in the world, and that is that we are evolving through them. And my experience of them is that they are different parts of the substance of our being. The substance of our being. And I'll do a little diagram, even though I don't know if you can see it, but if I was to say that you're a very irregular shaped individual, that's all right. I'm not right here. So if I draw the standard, now I am going to draw a standard sort of chakra system here, but not in any way fixed to this. I know that many things flow and interrelate depending on how you look at them. And now remember, there is no right and wrong. I now respect the fact it's all about your perspective. So to you now as a bottle of Blue Label Strathmore, to me it's a clear bottle and you're all mental. So that's it. So I'm right and you're what's left at the moment. Look, I'm getting wrapped up in this. I'm not going to be Lady Gaga. I'm going to be bound on the floor. Go on, take me up, brother. Do it. You want to put it here. Go on, you want to.
Touch the man so often.
It's so fun though, doing a section. At least I know you're just letting me know that you're here. That's right, I can feel that. Okay, so, journey through the centres. So, really, you know, most of it is kind of standard, maybe a bit boring for somebody, a bit cliche, you've seen it all before. But I'm going to say root chakra is about the body, the physical that is, and about the physical world. So when we were in this body, so consciousness is moving through each of these things, I call them bodies, just to make it a body. So my physical body, you know, when we first picked these up on this planet, or when they developed, that was that stage of humanity where it was all about survival in the physical. So shelter, warmth, fire, food, survival, all this stuff. That took ages. That was the longest one, the densest substance, the most difficult to move and make it obey. Then we got these moved into the second centre, which was of the emotions, of the waters. And you'll hear many people giving different versions of this. I will just invite you to consider this one for the evening. So emotions or watery self, creative, well, reproductive centres. And you'll notice that what we're doing here is actually where the bodies are layered elementally, or in the nature of their substance, in the same way that the planet is built. Because your body is built of planet stuff. Okay? It doesn't matter if you've been good rest and you know you came from the planet Zog, or it doesn't matter if you're convinced of some alien from wherever, you are in a physical body that is made up of this planet stuff. And that's all there is to it for now. So, if you have one of these, you have one of these. You also have the next part of the personality, which is the lower mind or the intellect. So look at intellect there. A lot of you may be surprised at seeing me put it here, but I'll just ask you to humour me for now. So, this is what we call the lower self, or the personality. And you can go through life operating with an intellect, emotions, and a body, and be creative, be productive, be a member of society, all the rest of it, no problem. But it's really like this little world set in itself. it can operate thinking it's all that there is, and that's fine. But then, those of us that have journeyed more, or evolution has driven it thus, is that we manage to experience stuff beyond the mind. I would invite you, probably all of you have probably had experiences beyond the mind and the emotions and the physical body, otherwise it probably wouldn't be somewhere like this for the evening. But even if it's not the case, I suggest that all of you have had experiences beyond the limitations of just these bodies, even in things like dreaming. So you experience it in dreaming, where you may move beyond the realm of just your rational mind and be in the cake of a rational being. Now the next centre is one that many people are familiar with, the heart, the seat of the soul, the first place we encounter higher awareness. And a lot of people have been through heart awakenings in the last sort of 10, 20 years. They've awakened to unity principles or oneness principles, and they perhaps try to live that way, try to live in a spirit of camaraderie, or in terms of just being more allowing and welcoming of others. And as a species, what's happened is, this one took ages, and because the substances that we're moving through, the elements we're moving through, from a scientific point of view, are all vibrating at a higher rate, it means that as we go through each one, the experience seems quicker. Okay, so it seems quicker because of the movement of the substance. So the mind moves really fast compared to the body. So you can imagine yourself home in bed now, and it's going to take your body about 2 hours to catch up. Maybe you're thinking that already, you know. Often we can make decisions that we mentally are up to speed with, but we haven't checked in with our emotions. And they take longer to agree. Or they take longer to change and agree or buy into the change that our mind would like to make, because the substances move at different rates. They vibrate at different rates. The journey was physical and survivalism, og, zog, all that sort of stuff. Emotional awakening. Everything from Atlantis, desire-based magic, all this sort of stuff, all the desire stuff, all the artistic stuff, all this sort of stuff stemming from the procreative reproductive centres. The mind. So elementally these are earth, you probably know this, earth, water, fire. Turns out, did you know that fire can't happen without even just like a little bit of water? I didn't know that, I learned that recently. Hardly needs just a little bit. So anyway, earth, water, fire. Next element is the heart. Now the heart is the first place that people tend to experience unity or connectedness. And it's because of how the heart operates as a plane. All these are horizontal planes. Okay? So the emotions can never be the mind, and they can never be the body. The body can never, ever, ever be the mind. It's on this earth plane, and it's flat as far as the body is concerned. Even though intellectually I can see it's a ball from space, all the rest of it, this body will never experience that. You understand that? When I'm walking, I will always be walking on a flat plane. Even if I'm going uphill, it's still a flat plane. I will never have the experience of walking on a ball that my mind might like to ideate. Okay, so the intellect, the intellectual awakening, the intellectual realms are what we're just coming out of the back of, where the mind has gone to describe the entirety of self and environment, and it's getting bored of itself. It's getting bored of its capacity to meet all the needs and whims and all the desire-based stuff. You know, these are saturated bodies. They're saturated experiential areas. They've been well explored, well experienced, well mapped. You know. Now the heart is interesting. It's the first seat of this first body of the soul body. So this you could call the lower self down here. Up here you could call the higher self, if you want to use such upper and lower terms. So we'll just call it that for now. We'll call it the soul. So the heart's the first thing that people have experienced with that. And it's a bit like walking up to a tree at night, when it all looks like it's one thing. And as you get closer, you start to realise it's made up of other bits. So when people approached the soul, they thought it was just one thing. It's just the soul, it's one thing. But as we've got closer to it as a species, we're actually experiencing that it's made up of smaller parts. So we'll just go through them as we just now. So I'm going to bet that most of you in here have had some kind of heart connection or heart awakening or heart experience at some point in the last 20 years. I know I'm not really gambling much, but yeah, I'm playing it safe. The thing is though, I will also be willing to bet that most of you have made decisions as a result of your belief in unity and unity principles and wholeness principles and all the rest of it that have led to tensions or have led to problems because of a thing I'm going to call over-unity. Okay? Over-unity. Now those of you familiar with free energy stuff, and you might have had speakers here talking about it, you hear them talking about over-unity all the time. So over-unity, everyone familiar with the principle? So over-unity is when you get out more energy than you put in. Now, so that's it in like a machine sense. So for people to be able to start machines that produce electricity and they just run forever like perpetual motion, and you know that's like over-unity. So you only spend a little amount of energy and you get loads out. Now my understanding is the only over-unity device I'm aware of in nature is nature. I had a good friend tell me once, he said, do you want to see an over-unity device? Look at a tomato. There's an over-unity device. Because from one tomato you've got hundreds of seeds. So that's over-unity where you've just got one fruit but it produces loads and loads, much more than what's needed. And over-unity in our consciousness is when we thought we could jump to oneness just because we tasted it. We thought we could leap to a community of open-hearted brotherhood in some way. And we maybe perhaps made mistakes, or not made mistakes. We've had experiences afterwards that have taught us that that maybe wasn't the healthiest boundary to have. Maybe that wasn't the healthiest boundary to have. And I'll tell you why it is, because the heart's element, so here we've got elements, earth, water, fire. Anybody know what the element of the heart is? Air. What organs is it next to? The lungs. Because the air is the one thing where, so we have this illusion of being separate, don't we? But we all breathe the same air. And I'm breathing into my innermost heart space, into my lungs, right in there, and there's not a single barrier in the way. There's no separation between the air that I breathe and the air that you breathe. There's not a single physical barrier in here. The air is the first place where we experience oneness or soul, S-O-L-E, S-O-L-E, and the planetary soul, where we are one and inseparable. The heart, the air, is the first place that we experience that. The heart is interesting because it is not a flat plane. It is both horizontal and vertical. This is where the symbol of the cross, funnily enough. And a blue piece of prop planned by Andy earlier this evening. He didn't tell me about it, but now we're just making it fit. Come on, make it more like a cross with a fist. It looks like a plexus. Yes, here we go. Excellent. Right, yes, there we go. And cross is the sideball, worn on the heart, because the heart is a vertical and a horizontal plane, which is where we get the unity principle and why you can have heart-infused mind, heart-infused or soul-infused. You can have soul-infused mind, soul-infused emotions, soul-infused body, because it works both ways. The thing is, though, the way to achieve that is by understanding the other bits that make up that particular body. Now, the funny thing is, if you're looking at the planet from a distance, and you look at the way the elements are built, so the earth, that's at the bottom, and the water sits on the earth, and then the fire sits on top of all of that, the air sits on top of that. What's next? What's the next element after air? No? We're heading out. Space. Space is the next element. Ether is an interesting one. Ether kind of is the most confusing of all because it actually sits in a relationship between the second centre and the fifth. It is confusing. The second centre and the fifth are related because the fifth centre, the space body, is actually the true creative centre, the seat of the word. This is reproductive, procreative. This is creative and productive. The space body is like this is the cosmic womb. Everything exists within space. And as we breathe and as more things come in, space just expands and goes through it all. Space is the big silent watcher, the silent world. And it's the most terrifying thing for us little feeble humans. So the relationship between the 2nd and the 5th century is because of how things come in through ether. I mean, you mentioned it, we won't get into too much. But that is why you find similar hair on the 2nd centre and the 5th in men. So this hair is more akin to pubic hair than is head hair because of the relationship between the 2nd and the 5th centres. Anyway, the space body is the next one, and that's the challenge we've all been going through the last few years, what I call the space initiation. We're going through the mass space initiation, where most of us, I would guess, have had all traditional trappings of security removed from you in the last few years. Perhaps relationships you thought you could trust and rely upon have proven to not be so. Work situations, home situations, financial situations, trusted relationships, new relationships arising to replace those, but not being based on the same modality of security. And we want to bet probably a bit more on that, and that's happened to probably all of you in the last few years. And it's as we're moving from a state into a dynamic state. So we're moving from spherical thinking and spherical consciousness into a spiral capacity. And all your lives are actually building you to be able to handle dynamic change. Because that is how the universe is actually built. It is not built in a state. It's built in a dynamic changing state. And we are being gently but forcefully, at the same time, another paradox, pushed into a position to be able to deal with that. And space is, as it says in Star Trek, the final frontier. So the final frontier is for you to be able to hold your own space. To become that which was present. You know, to become present. To hold your space without shame, without fear, without guilt, without the trappings to your past behaviours and modalities, without the judgments you cast upon yourself as a result of them. Can you fill your space? And can you let go of all the things you're gripping onto in the world with attention? So all the vices, all the indulgences, all the habits of behaviour and security that we grip with our perception and our consciousness and our attention. For fear that if we let go, we would sink into something unimaginable. Or perhaps just terrified of the feeling of our own presence. And why am That's what's holding me back. That's what makes me reach out and climb on things. So this is where we're at. This is where we've been going as a species for the last couple of years. As a species, it's not just you. This is about our evolution collectively. Do you know what's amazing? If we can get it right, and you can hold your space, then that means you'll be in a position of standing, telling your own story. You fill your space with you and newness. Great. The next centre that we arrive at after space is in a place beautifully called the temple. That temple is what lies ahead for us if we can hold our own space. A temple of trusted interaction, where we can be in dynamic changing state, but without the judgments of the past that we've got. Because at the minute, the only way we can make this transition is if we can give each other the space to change. We can also take, own, claim, delineate whatever is required to draw enough lines so you can claim the power to change, to give yourself the space to change. Because it is the greatest and most difficult gift you can give yourself. It's much, much easier to judge yourself as a snapshot for every temporary failure or half-hearted effort that we've made in different things. But really, to rally yourself up, to not get fixated on the temporary snapshot, to not get fixated upon the one warbled breath or the bit when your hand shook or whatever, to not fixate on that, to be able to fixate on the other, the fact that you had a goal, that you fought to change habit, that yes, it was fragile, yes, it was whatever, but you had a go. Whether that be speaking out when you normally wouldn't, or whether it be engaging in a behaviour that you know you need to change, or whether it be making a change that you know you wanted to. It doesn't matter what it is. That's why what I've tried to do tonight is to distill it to its simplest points so that it can apply to any of your lives. It doesn't matter what the situations that we find ourselves are in. Some of the stuff is common to us as humans. So the challenges we're up against, the colouring of our species, that's common. The blue collar, white collar, dog collar system works in the entire Western world. You know, really are all in this together. But the only way to make it to the next stage is space. Giving it and taking it. And not jumping in with tension, you know, attention, the attention of judgment, the attention of criticism, our disembodied armchair psychologist has been cultivated by modern media, would love to sit there and judge every little minute behaviour or action that others seem to engage in. And it's quite happy to sit there and do so as long as we don't do any of that. And there's so many areas where it's easy for us to sit in the judgment of clarity because we're so good. We didn't cover it too much, but one of the aspects of the sides is, I mentioned earlier, one side, the right side, does all the naming. The left is just what's rest and stuff that's unnamed. But that naming bit gets so good, we become such know-it-alls. We can point everything out. We can point out our own flaws, we can point out other people's flaws, we can point out what's wrong with the world, all that sort of stuff. But it's also disembodied. It's disembodied because it's all there, whereas we get into the substance of where we're actually at in our own space, as we feel it, when we feel it, and we start to meet ourselves. I like to call that stage ideation meets capacity. So what you believe about yourself and where you're at, and then how it actually manifests in the situations that test that. I've certainly found that my capacity has not met my ideation. And I find myself, you know, wrestling for the courage to be vulnerable and fragile and imperfect and you know, tentative in my efforts as a result of not knowing which way to go or what is the right thing to do, but knowing it must be a change and having the courage to do that regardless. And this is the thing that we're all up against, is owning that in your own journey. To draw those lines. Remember, you are shaping the change for the future, and it's all about what you pay attention to, how important you make it, because has anybody here had a oneness experience in their life? Any kind of spiritual connection where you felt just at peace in the world? You might be just sitting on a park bench. It doesn't have to be anything marvellous and spectacular. There's quite a few hands there. Okay, can I just ask, in your oneness experience, was I there? No. Yes. No. That's all right. I was there too. Absolutely. The thing is though, this is about the importance. She's right though, but the importance is that in your initial experiences of it, I'm not there, and neither are you in mine initially. Because you start off in your own space. You started off in your own space. Now what our culture is actually teaching us to do is to be confused between our unity and our division. And we actually got things the wrong way around in the old heart awakening because we thought, oh, we've been in division so long, I'm away from the unity, yeah, it's all about the heart, blah, blah, blah. And people try to abandon division to embrace unity. But actually you can't do that, and it doesn't work, and what ends up happening is always horribly wrong. And actually, what we want to do is, I don't know where to put this, but I'll chop it right. So, the division comes first. It's division and unity. Division and unity. Now, the whole universe is built in division and unity. My body is an example of what I call divided unity. So I get to experience the unity of my being, but I'm totally divided within. You know, I've got kidneys, I've got spleen, I've got lungs, I've got blood, and none of them are crossing over into each other. They're divided. But together they operate as a unity. And this is how the whole universe is built. It's a division and unity. Now what's happening in our consciousness is we jump to the unity first. thinking we want to abandon the division. But actually, it's our respect of our division that actually helps us shape each other. That's it. So I'm going to have to hold it up now like this. My little crop. I could actually almost fashion a mic out of this. Look at that. There we go. I've never a mic made of duct tape. There's a new change in the state of the world because we now have high-tech duct tape microphones. That's amazing. Okay, so there's a real my new tool. And yeah, so division and unity is such an important point because if we can celebrate the division, so some people call it diversity. It's not diversity, it's division. No, it's difference. It's difference. It's something that's different because it can be scary as well. And it's only when we've got over the scariness of other people. This is what the whole I am here thing is about. It's terrifying to think that there's so many other people out there that are thinking, breathing beings with ideations and aspirations and beliefs and all the rest of it. And our reality could bump into them, my reality could bump into them. I find that terrifying because it's like, I have, I call it eye to eye, pupil to pupil. This is what I find in all the brotherhood of all earthlings to me is about whether they have a pupil. Because it's talk about the eyes being the windows to the soul, don't they? The eyes are the windows to the soul. Well, to me, that is about the blackness at the heart of the eye. And that is, to me, we are all spawned from the void. And we're all expressions of the great eye seeking to fill the void with its own beingness. But the great eye cannot fill the void. And almost like the pupils at the heart of our eyes are the one reminder that even the great eye cannot cover in the void. Its space is so vast. But actually, all of us, we're all creatures spawned of voidness, expressing the great eye. And as long as they have a pupil, then they're my brother or sister. Because we're all pupils, we're all students of the same expression. And I do find it quite a powerful thing to respect another's rightness. That rightness of how you view the glass, to be able to stand there and be in power with that. To actually find power in respecting the rightness of your perspective as being different from mine. Where I know you're right and I know I'm right. And for us to be able to find power in that, rather than having to be about right and wrong, where we can actually find strength of shared perspectives, where it's not the perspective that's shared, it's the recognition that we're addressing the same thing. We're looking at the same thing, we're experiencing the same thing. And the strength that can come from that is incredible. So we stand and strengthen our division, and then we find unity. And this is exactly how Lyle Watson, evolutionary biologist, wrote a beautiful book, one called Supernature, second one called Lifetime. And in Lifetime, he's trying to talk about how, really, from an evolutionary biology point of view, there aren't any complex organisms on the planet, really. They're all lots of little organisms pretending to behave as a single organised whole. And he talks about how there are still massive jellyfish in the sea, which aren't an organism. It's just a series of cells that have a shared agreement to perform functions for each other. And he's suggesting that that's how all organised life on the planet came about. And certainly that is an amazing thing to consider, is that so there's something that it looks like a jellyfish, it's got all the bits of a jellyfish, but it isn't. It's not one. It's lots of bits that have all agreed to perform functions for each other. That's amazing. And that's where we are approaching. Because remember, the big story is, what are human beings? What are we here for? The reality is, we don't even know yet. Because I don't see us telling a story of our species that is aligned with what the planet seems to want and do. We seem to be telling our own story for now. But I do feel like if each of us can get into our space, own the space of our story, and get rid of paying attention to all this distracting nonsense, then something really amazing and magical could actually happen. But the challenge is this space initiation. It's what I call the great abandonment. The great abandonment is being able to feel yourself adrift as perhaps being the only I for that to be okay. Because you are. There's only one of us here. I do feel like we are all fending off the border of an infinity with each other. And that's where I find my respect for all of you, all also for my desire for your experience to be one of joy and presence and substance and all this sort of stuff. And the thing that I know I can't control what happens out there in the world. I can't control what happens to you in your life. The life situations that brought you to where you are infinitely varied compared to what they are for mine. And I don't know what the future's going to bring either. I used to think everything could be fixed and it could all be fine, and now I'm not so sure. And so because of that, my feeling is, if something horrible does go down, you know, if there is a big mushroom cloud out the window, then what I'm most interested in is knowing that we can reach out to each other and touch each other in strength and compassion and presence and joy and knowing, and actually have a meaningful connection with each other and look at each other with joy and wonder and gratitude, as opposed to panic and fear because of our lost abandonment. I'd certainly like it to have the former, and all the stuff that I've been talking about tonight, even though maybe somewhat disjointed and some of it somewhat abstract, all of it is to facilitate exactly that, is to facilitate your wild arrival in the now with all the terrors and fears that brings, but also with all the joy and the celebration, the possibility and the hope. So on that note, I'm going to wrap up and say, if you want to change state, then state change. And name it. Name the things. Draw the lines in your life that you need to. Doesn't matter where it is. It's never going to be perfect when you first give it a go. Give yourself the space for that to be okay. Don't give yourself a hard time for it. Don't give your friends or family a hard time if they're trying to change. Be supportive and encouraging. It's really not difficult. One of the things that actually I noticed about the colouring of the men or the colouring of the species is that I've really noticed it in the last year, is that as soon as any of us tries to change, it's amazing how quickly even our loved ones will jump on us with their judgments. And not just their judgments, it's a shame, it's not the right term, but with their state, with the state within them and their belief about you and their belief about the world and all the rest of it. And really, this is where, everybody familiar with the film The Matrix? Yeah, in the Matrix there's a character called Agent Smith. And I think Agent Smith is the most important character in the whole of the whole series. Because the point about Agent Smith is, anybody can be an agent of state. Anybody can be an agent, and this is where I've done it. I've been it. You know, I've been it. I've been the judge that's had to go at somebody for trying to be courageous with speaking to somebody new or trying to do something different, and maybe, you know, having a go. It doesn't matter whether it's singing a song or having a dance or confronting authority or approaching somebody of the opposite sex for conversation if you're interested. It doesn't matter what it is, but it's funny how when that change comes about, how often people can jump on that with judgments and criticisms. And I'd just like to invite this evening to banish all of those things, to banish those particular spells and turn them into words of encouragement and joy and support for the state of change. Because this is on the way to change, where you end up in this dynamic state of, it's a state of change. So that means it's always changing, and we've got to cut our teeth at getting good with that, and getting okay with that, and getting comfortable with that. So I hope there's maybe been a few tools or pointers in there this evening for you all. I'm going to shut up now and let you all carry on with the evening. I'd like to thank you all for your time and your attention. I would like to think that your attention has been well spent this evening on some ideas which actually have meaning and substance attached to them, as opposed to things which are pointless and we know it. I invite you to take great care with your attention as you go on from here, and to realise how precious and valuable and amazing it is. And to take control of it, choose. There used to be a time in my life when, if I couldn't decide what was the right thing to do next, I could just wait. And eventually the options would disappear until something would reveal itself to be an obvious thing. I'd be like, hey, it's all right, I can just do this one now, I don't have to make a decision. What I've noticed in the last year or so is that actually that isn't happening anymore, and that there is just choice. And you will be presented with choices where it's almost impossible to fathom which is better, because some will have some things going for them and others won't. And I'll invite you to consider that the challenge isn't which to choose. There is no right or wrong. There is only what you choose and what's left. Okay? And what matters is that you get good at choosing, because that is what has been taken away from us in the deferral of responsibility that has given rise to state in the world. It's about making decisions. How many of you have struggled to decide what to have for breakfast or lunch, or struggled to choose what to buy in the shop? I struggle. because choosing isn't easy. It's a skill in itself. So I'm going to invite you to consider as well that as you're making your choices and you're changing your state, be frivolous, be wild, have abandonment, have trust in yourself. Make some adventurous decisions, because there is no right and wrong. It's about you learning to choose, to be okay with what you've chosen, to trust yourself,